You might be breaking copyright law right now. Well, probably not, but also you definitely are. Welcome to the world of copyright, which is confusing and scary. Like the existence of spiders. Why are they a thing? We're not going to answer that question though, because we're going to look into the world of copyright and how you can avoid legal trouble as an artist. The main 2 points I'm going to cover are how to get around using photographs for reference and how to produce fan art in a safe way. Because a lot of people do fan art, I'm going to start with that. Before I do, I must stress that this isn't legal advice and I'm not a copyright lawyer. If you have any doubts, consult a professional. So, does creating fan art infringe on copyright? Well, yeah. It doesn't matter if you're selling it or not. If you recreate something that is owned by someone else, you're infringing on their copyright. Technically, cosplayers are infringing on copyright too. But this begs the question, why is fan art everywhere? People get hired by the companies that they did fan art for. That would be like being hired by the bank after you perform a robbery on them, right? Sort of, but a lot of these companies have a lot to gain over fan art. For one, it's free publicity. If artists all across the world are creating fan art that other people enjoy, then it keeps the characters in the mind of the public, which increases the chance of people watching the movie and buying the video game or merchandise. Another reason that companies won't go after fan art is because it simply looks bad on the company if they do it. Most artists aren't making much money and fan art is often their main source of income, so if a company tries to sue someone who is worth hardly anything, it comes across as bullying. Which brings us on to Disney. Disney have a rich history of some remarkable lawsuit cases based on copyright infringement. In the late 80s, they sued not one, not two, but 3 daycare centers in Florida for using characters they owned as murals on the wall. These are murals for babies, let's remember. Disney's defense was that it set an unfair precedent, and by leaving murals as they were, they would basically be giving everyone permission to use their characters. So, legally speaking, Disney had every right to sue those daycare centers, but it makes them look like complete cunt. Now, don't get me wrong, Disney has sued other companies and studios for ripping off their IPs, and that's totally understandable. But it's worth noting that they can and will come after you if you're perceived as a big enough threat. It does seem that Disney have calmed down now, especially in a social media world where bad press can spread at incredible speed. So based on that, you're not likely to be sued by Disney or any other company. But just because something isn't likely doesn't mean it's not possible. So it's usually best to steer clear of blatant fan art that copies other people's work. We have a moral duty in all of this as well, after all. Imagine if you drew a comic and someone else redrew your panels and sold them. That would feel pretty bad. What can you do about it then? Well, one of the things that copyright lawyers will look for is whether the piece is transformative enough. This means, did you change certain aspects of the piece enough so it no longer infringes copyright? It's a bit of a vague definition, and so a lot of the decision making is out of your control. It's based on how well the copyright lawyer can make the claim that it's transformative, as well as the judge's ruling. In the case of Richard Prince, he created a collage using images from a photographer's book. He did this a lot in his paintings, and his work was held for infringing. He appealed, and 2 years later, the court ruled that most of Prince's work were transformative and were therefore fair use. They remanded the case for the remaining 5 pieces. So yeah, you can transform a piece by giving it a new spin or by putting your own commentary on it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you'll avoid being sued. I mentioned the Richard Prince case because it involves the use of a photographer's work, which nicely segues into our final part of the video. Can you use photographs as reference? The answer is yes. And no. If you're taking several pieces of reference and are using that to create an art piece, you should be fine. The general rule of thumb is that you shouldn't be able to tell that what you've used matches a photograph. A controversial figure in the comics industry is Greg Land, who has been accused several times of infringing copyright in his artwork. One of the most infamous cases is this cover. Here's the artwork and here's the photo. And in case you thought you could just flip a photo and get away with it, here's Exhibit A. He's also been accused of tracing over photos of toys for his work and even other pieces of art. So what do you do? Well, there are 2 things you can do which will help you avoid this sort of thing. The first is to find out who took the photo and simply ask them if you can use it for reference. Ideally in writing, so you have something to back you up in case they change their mind. I did this for my nude series of figures I did. I bought the reference packs from Proco, which I recommend by the way, and drew them based directly off the references. There's a bit of exaggeration and I added some colour, but you could easily tell that these are the photos. If I hadn't asked for permission and Stan was in a grumpy mood, I could be liable to a lawsuit, but he's nice and you should subscribe to his channel if you haven't done so already. The second thing you can do is take photographs yourself. Granted, you won't be able to do this for some things, but for the most part you can set your camera up on a timer, strike a pose and snap a photo. You can also use copyright free or public domain imagery like I do for 99% of the photos and clips in this video. If any copyright lawyers are watching this, my videos are for educational purposes only. So that's the basics of copyright. If in doubt, don't use images that are owned by other people and ask for the owner's permission. You never know where the mouse is watching, waiting, ready to strike. If you have any other questions or concerns about copyright, I have a link to some articles in the description. Next week we're going to look at how to find our art style for our comic book project, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. I've been Brinkley, have fun drawing, and I'll see you next week.